Hey folks, it's Matt. So when you look at this tank, what do you think? Well, I think it looks beautiful for one part, but also that it's very naked. As you can see, this vehicle is covered in ERA, or explosive reactive armor bricks, and to me it's naked. In modern conflicts that we see of today, tanks are totally exposed to FPV drones, of course mines and anti-tank guided missiles, but when we look at drones, they truly are the highest threat capability to tanks of today, and ironically this footage is being filmed on a drone, which just goes to show how easy and flexible it is to take out such a sophisticated piece of equipment with a tiny little drone. And of course, both on the Russian and Ukrainian sides, there's a lot of engineers and thinking tanks trying to look at ways of countering this kind of threat. There's the technological side with using jamming, things like that, but also just the old school version of cancellation of a tank, putting armor cages on it, like coke cages, and turning them into what are called turtle tanks, which we'll talk about shortly. But this isn't new. This threat has been around for a long time, and what I find most fascinating within the last 10 to 15 years is the difference in armored fighting warfare. Now, a lot of the footage, as you've probably noticed at the beginning of the video, and the video you're looking at right now, is of Syrian tank combat footage, because the reality is, from then until today, the style of armored warfare has significantly changed. The biggest threat to Syrian tanks in their own naked exposures you're seeing right now was anti-tank guided missiles, and used with great effect in the Syrian war. Of course, the difference that we're seeing today, though, is that anti-tank guided missiles, although at the beginning of the Ukrainian war being heavily and most dominantly used to attack tanks, they're not as much anymore, and there's a few reasons for this. Cost. To have anti-tank guided missiles continuously fired upon battle groups and battle groups of armor that Russians or Ukrainians can provide at any one time, the systems alone are very expensive and difficult to keep up with logistics and funding. Of course, as we've talked many times before, wars are very much predominant on cost, and anti-tank guided missiles unfortunately cost a lot of money and can be quite complex to train and set up, whereas those with a basic drone can do a lot more damage from a lot further away and without even being seen. Of course, with the TOW, it is literally a fly-by-wire system having to guide on the missile onto its target. And of course, TOW missiles are quite predominantly used also in the Ukrainian war at the same time, but we're not seeing them as much because war stores are being depleted. Drones, however, are not. You can easily buy drones off the commercial or civilian market. You cannot buy a TOW anti-tank missile launcher, and this is why the ATGM, I guess, rush is slowly coming to an end in the Ukrainian war, and that defense mechanisms against missiles like the TOW are not as more predominantly seen on the defense of tanks that we see going on in Ukraine, because the armor packages to defeat against a TOW-2 is very significant and sophisticated in its technological adaptation, whereas a drone is exposing the weakness of a tank specifically by the pilot. Now, a TOW missile launcher being fired can still do the same kind of detail, but from the range that you're firing, you're not able to guide that missile into a weak spot that is really identifiable by the human eye or even the optics. But what we're truly seeing now with drones is exploiting that, and now we are seeing turtle tanks. And this is just, it blows my mind seeing footage like this, because you can look at this in two different ways: ridiculousness or ingenuity. I personally go on the more side of, this is very, very clever. It's cheap, it's easy, and it is protecting your armored fighting vehicle from drones. And drones do not have sophisticated, for the most part anyway, the cheaper ones, sophisticated dual-shaped charges, heavier duty explosives to knock out the armor packages that we're used to seeing, like explosive reactive armor. And more footage of these turtle tanks are coming out. Some really good videos on it. You should go check out some analysis. I think the Armorer's Bench was actually one of the best videos I've watched in regards to the turtle tank, so thank you for making that video. It was really eye-opening. But I do speculate a little bit as to what we're going to see in the next iteration of this, because this is not sustainable. It's really not. You cannot just continue welding steel onto tanks and hoping for the best, because The attrition rate of tanks in Russia on both sides is extremely high, and this is somewhat desperation. I do think it's very ingenious of doing this kind of practice, but you're losing a lot of capability of the tank. Mobility, flexibility. You can't even rotate the turret all the way around. You're totally defeating the purpose of having that turret on there. We're going back to the realm of Russian tank destroyers, barrel pointing at certain arcs. And even then, we're seeing that the turtle tank and the cope cages, we've done a lot of videos on that across the YouTube platform as well, are just not cutting the mustard. The drones are still able to penetrate or find exploited weaknesses on tanks. And it brings me back to a video I made some time ago as to what is the biggest weakness on a tank. It's not its hull, it's not its turret, it's not its gun, it's its tracks. These drones are now not trying to take the crew out, they're not trying to take out the gun, they're not trying to make the tank a K kill, they're looking for that M kill, that mobility kill. And as you can see, this tank is completely redundant as being, quote, a tank at this point. Its flexibility as being a agile armored fighting vehicle is out the window. It's basically, at this point, a mine-clearing vehicle that has a self-propelled gun. That's really about it. But I'm not giving the ingenuity or the initiative or the MacGyver levels of protection they're trying to push on these tanks a hard time, because they have to. It's desperation. When you're looking at drones persistently trying to take out your vehicle, you have to find opportunity to fight back. But this level of extreme protection is actually totally negating what the tank's needing to do. Visibility alone is gone. As a crew commander or as an armored fighting vehicle commander, myself, being locked into a steel dome would be pretty terrifying from an infantry perspective too, because let alone drones getting up to the vehicle, infantry could quite easily sneak up on these turtle tanks and get into a weakness and pop a few grenades in there and cause just as much damage. I totally respect the fact that the turtle tank is part of a adaptation needed to deal with the current threat, but the current threat isn't going anywhere. So is it making any sense to continually send more and more tanks into an environment where that this type of armor package is not sustainable? It's also not working to great effect. A lot of footage that I've looked at, which unfortunately I'm not going to show in my video because I can't, is still defeating this stuff. I mean, it's just steel plate with some rebar and some caging. We had caged armor in Afghanistan on the Warriors to pretty good effect for spaced armor with things like RPG, but this is a different threat. I can't imagine going to Afghanistan back when I went and being told, hey, by the way, now you're also going to deal with drones. Huge respect to tank crews dealing with this kind of warfare, because I honestly would be absolutely terrified knowing that any moment an incendiary grenade could be dropped in between my lap onto the fuel tanks of a warrior and take out me and my entire crew, and there would be nothing I could do, and I'd have no idea it was even happening for the most part. So, I do appreciate and respect this armor package, but what's the next step? Do we now see as the turtle tank of the normality? Is this what we're going to really just do for the rest of the Ukrainian war, is just add more armor and more metal on top of this thing? It's not a tank at that point for myself anymore. As I said, it's just a mine-clearing device with a gun on it. That gun is obviously still giving the tank a lot of capability, but I just don't think this is the future of where tanks are going to go and what needs to be done to keep them as an effective vehicle or fighting platform on the battlefield, particularly in Ukraine right now. And drones are only going to get more and more sophisticated, and their pilots to find the weaknesses, and no matter what armor you put on there. Tracks, I think, is really what the pilot's going to be zooming in on now with these drones, not the hull or the barrel or even the mine-clearing vehicle. It's going to be taking out those tracks, because as soon as you take out the tracks, you've got to pull in a recovery crew, or you've got to pull the crew out of there to, try and get them out of danger, and you're adding more and more resources, just making the problem even bigger. A lot of vehicles just are abandoned at that point, and then the drone doesn't really need to worry too much about cope cages or turtle tank armor, because they'll find the weakness to the front of the tank where the barrel's still pointing out the front, or they'll just artillery the hell out of it, which we all know at the prominent use of weapons in the Ukrainian war right now is artillery. Thousands upon thousands of rounds being fired every day. This metal caging is going to do nothing against 155mm projectiles or heavier. It's just going to tear right through it. It's particularly designed to do that. Certain ammunition like DPICM, it's designed to punch through the top of tanks. So these turtle tanks are just sitting ducks, and I think we're just going to see potentially a new style of tank coming up in the future, whereas it's a turtle tank, but is designed to be a turtle tank. You know, it can still rotate its turret. The slanted armor on top is really specifically mustered for taking out drones, and no matter how many drones you try and fire at the tank, it's going to push back with whatever armor package is on top of there, but it must be so heavy to do that. The amount of ERA you got to put on there, and again, it comes back to the crew mobility and observability. You're going to have to put cameras all over it. The drone's going to take out the cameras, and then you're just losing more and more features of the tank. So, the turtle tank and cope cages, I don't know what's going to happen next. What is going to be the next form of, budget protection and defense from drones and anti-tank guided missiles of the future? Who's to say? So let me know what you think. Do you think this is a worthwhile protection platform? Do you think this is what tanks are going to do more and more in the future? Do you think technology is going to adapt to potentially take out drones or ATGMs even further than active protection systems or, jamming devices, etc.? I would love to know your opinion in the comment section below. Let me get some feedback from these videos as well. Of course, if you enjoy them, I'd love to hear your input. And once again, go check out the Armorer's Bench YouTube. He's got a great channel there. Love his content. Hats off to you, sir. You got some really good stuff going on there. Keep it up. Myself, I think my channel's slowly dying into the wind here. There's so many other big channels that are doing so much better than I am, and I'm really, really happy that they are, because the reality is I can't do this full time. I just got so much going on, and I don't have the skill set or the researching capability to keep up with some of these more professional channels. As a one-man operation, family and etc., etc., it's just tough. It's tough at the moment, but I'll keep trying. Hopefully you enjoy the content, and if you do, of always, keep that bell button clicked, that like button clicked as well, and you can follow me on Patreon and PayPal, and if you want to support those channel, please feel free to. The financial support to my channel really does mean a lot, keeps me going, and thanks to everyone who has been. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. All the best. Bye bye.